Even with questionable ice conditions at the Garden and the Panthers giving up a shorthanded goal in the second period, the Panthers come back, take over the third, and are now one win away from the Stanley Cup Final.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, May 31st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're to our team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez in the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at Monoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at @L_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. So the Florida Panthers go into Madison Square Garden for Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Final. In this one where the New York Rangers really were getting the majority of the shots. The Panthers had the more shot attempts, but the Rangers were quicker to get the puck out of the zone and with the Panthers forecheck was able to still not give up as many chances. But after a shorthanded goal for the New York Rangers, the Panthers come back and really take over in the third period, and 2 third-period goals, one by Anton Lundell on a counter attack, and Sam Bennett on the empty net goal gave the Florida Panthers the win. But even with a late push by the New York Rangers, still the Panthers still stuck to their game and still with another dominant third period. But it is a Friday, which means it is a Fairbanks Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Nich Fairbanks is here to break down this Panthers 3-2 win over the New York Rangers and now take a 3-2 series lead going back to Sunrise. And Nick, how are you feeling, my friend? Welcome back to the show.
On one hand, I feel vindicated as president of the Lundell fan club. Secondly, it's been a long road this season, and the team is just taking it one game at a time, and it's coming to fruition again. Job's not done, but this team is showing all the lessons that they've learned since last playoff season, that they know what it takes to win. And tonight was a huge step forward in that regard.
Yeah, and the Road Warriors have done it again for the Panthers, and that was with mostly, that the Rangers were coming out with a desperation in them, especially with how game 3 and 4 was for them, even though they ended up with the overtime winner in game 3, just how the ice was tilted. Peter Laviolette was also talking about just no answers after game 4 about why they're pinned so much in their own end. And then even with all that, the Panthers, the grade A chances they had in the first period too, even though they didn't have the shot on goal advantage, which, funny enough, you use the word vindicated. there's a song on the soundtrack of Spider-Man 2 with the song Vindicated by Dashboard Confessional. So New York, Spider-Man, Vindicated. It all makes sense for all of this when it comes to the Panthers getting this win. So great use of words, my friend, there. But for them too, I mean, with this one, for the Panthers to just give up that shorthanded goal. I mean, the conversation between games with Kreider picking the mouthpiece of Matthew Tkachuk, throwing it in the stands, which it didn't end up getting in the stands. He could have gotten misconduct there. But the way the Panthers were able to respond after that pizza by Chucky, and even a little bit of confusion on a change with the second power play unit starting that one for them, the Panthers were still able to respond just a few minutes later there for over 5 minutes later there, where the New York Rangers lose Gustav Forsling on an entry and a beautiful snake eye pass by Sam Bennett, which Sam Bennett what an incredible game for them. That was really the line that set the tone for the Panthers in this one.
Definitely did. And you knew that Kreider was going to score after the comments came out and they asked Tkachuk about, the whole mouthpiece thing. And rightfully so, how he answered. But, Paul Maurice wasn't probably too happy with how that was answered because he doesn't like giving other teams bulletin board material. He doesn't like giving the other team, a mental edge. So if that's the most that Kreider's going to do, I'm fine with it. Let him score a shorty. But the fact that it came from Tkachuk on a terrible decision crossing the blue line, that's just a puck you wish just got deep and, go rescue it afterwards. But again, this team is resilient. They don't get down when they get down a goal. If something doesn't go their way, the game's not lost. It's all about keeping your composure and then being able to regroup and everything. And they did that wonderfully tonight. I just want to know how the Rangers lost Forsling. That is one of the rules that you need to really stick by when you're playing defense or even playing hockey is don't puck watch. Understand all the players that are around you and see what kind of dives and what kind of cuts they're making because all 4 or 5 of those Rangers players were watching what Bennett was doing. And then
especially Lindgren.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And just Forsling smoked him. And I have to say, the fact that the goal went in, it went off of Shesterkin. If Shesterkin would have stopped that, I don't know how this game would have went then, but it was a huge turning point in this game, and it just showed that this team again just was not going to give up, and that they had all the confidence and all the composure to do it.
Yeah, and for the Panthers, when you think about their grade A's and coming into the forecheck, unable to cash in from turnovers from Gustafsson, Keandre Miller, they're even though they were picking and choosing their spots, even though they didn't have the shot on goal advantage, and even for the Panthers, the minute crunching. We talk about how the top 9 is crunched there. Eetu Luostarinen had some shifts on the fourth line. Stephen Lawrence didn't really play much tonight, but you saw how much the fourth line was getting those shifts with Eetu there too. And for the Panthers, their penalty kill once again, especially on that first power play for the Rangers, but also getting a little bit of a friendly whistle with after Mikkola crashed the net, and then Gustafsson with the roughing, a coincidental minor to keep it 5-on-4. So it was that for the Panthers, it was a little bit of a relief for them too, but also the fact that you're able. I also got to give credit to OEL and Kulikov pair. My goodness, were they amazing tonight, with Kulikov just oozing confidence in the zone. Had a beautiful pinch and then a feed from Tkachuk on the doorstep, which almost went in for his first point of the playoffs too. So that pair stuck out to me when you saw, and this was a game that was all about, you needed that one game in a series where the Barkov, where somebody not named Barkov, Tkachuk, and the ones we talk about all the time that you need to, and the Verhaeghes of the world, and then you got other guys stepping up. This was the one game you needed, and the fact that this is coming late in the series too. You can't ask for a better position for the Florida Panthers to be in.
You really can't. And, I think I've said this on, another occasion, but my idea of this series and how it was going to go down is it was going to come down to the stars. Who's going to show up, who's going to be able to provide that little push to get their team over the edge and get them into the Stanley Cup Final. And so far it's been Florida. You have Barkov, you have Reinhart, you have Verhaeghe, Tkachuk's now starting to put his name in there. And now you have Sam Bennett, who's finally entered the chat. And what a difference he's made now that he looks actually almost pretty much healthy. But just knowing that, that you have availability and you have players that are down in your third line and also in your fourth line that can contribute. I know that Lomberg and
Cousins.
Yeah, Cousins were not in, and those are usually your crash buddies. And Lomberg has looked good pretty much all series, but there's definitely been a change in different idea of how they wanted to play the game. Ocho, your guy, had a really good game. He almost scored last game. He's had a really good series. The 2 games that he's played in, he's been really good. Stenlin's been steady. He hasn't scored yet, but I wish he has. But to know that if your first line is not really going, that you do have layers. You have the second line that can pick it up, and it doesn't have to be Tkachuk. Bennett can show up. Then you have the third line where Lundell finally is now, in a way, like his coming out party as like I don't want to say a premier because he's definitely not a premier, but he's becoming more of a serviceable, dedicated center that you can rely on going forward. And then you have the fourth line that will not. They won't be hemmed into their zone, and they won't do anything stupid with the puck. It's just get it out, get to the neutral zone, and try to attack from there. So definitely a lot of positives from those lines helping the Panthers get a 3-2 lead in this series.
Yeah, no doubt. And Bennett is taking a lot more draws too. Now that he's getting into the groove of things, and now, after what happened in Game 3, especially. Now we're seeing more of Bennett taking them for the Cats. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2. We're going to discuss more about when we thought the game was won and our 3 stars of the game. We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. And Game Time makes the NBA Finals and Stanley Cup Final tickets even easier and faster. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and view from your seats. Lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA and NHL tickets. With last-minute deals, save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concert, comedy, theater, and more. And you have zone deals even more when you choose the section and let Game Time choose the seats. The lowest price guarantee or Game Time will give you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Had to turn down the volume with all that screaming and shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Back on this Friday, May 31st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. So, Nick, 3 stars of the game for me. Bennett is number 1 for me. Just about how confident he is with how strong he is on the pucks, battling with the boards. I had this note right prior to the third period. That line was 17-4 shot attempts in favor of that line. Matthew Tkachuk specifically, his shot share was over 80%, 16-4 to. So he's also one of my stars of the game too. And also Anton Lundell is another one for me. And I mentioned Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Dmitry Kulikov earlier. Both of them. OEL's shot share was 19-11, and Kulikov's was just over 55%. So those two came out big. And for the Panthers, their penalty kill was just tight. And even on that first one, Rangers were just handling the puck in one end and not moving tape to tape. They weren't zipping it around. They were just standing still too. So it wasn't just the Panthers just being tight, but it was just the Rangers like not finding a lane to the net for shooting lanes. So that's another thing for that unit for the Panthers. But your 3 stars of the game for the Panthers, as they gave up 0 5-on-5 goals too.
I'm going to go with you. Sam Bennett as my number 1. I'm going to take Anton Lundell as number 2. And number 3 is going to be Gustav Forsling, because he's been amazing all playoffs long. He's being rewarded with some really amazing, timely goals. And after signing his contract, he could have taken a step back and really just say, hey, listen, I got paid. I'm where I want to be. I don't need to step it up another gear. I think he has. And he's really taken this Florida Panthers defense to another level, because he can do it all right now. So had it not been for Bennett's aggression and his type of play, Forsling wouldn't have gotten his goal. Lundell coming down the left-hand wing, just putting an innocent shot on goal that, he put it in a way that Shesterkin could not, I guess, I want to say move his glove in a way that he would have got there in time. It was a very sneaky shot. And then you have, Forsling, that just from the blue line to blue line is just probably the best defender on both teams at this point.
Yeah, and for the Panthers, for them, I mean, we've been a little tough on Tarasenko in throughout the playoffs and what he's done, but just the ability to get that screen to take the eyes away from Igor Shesterkin. And honestly, outside of the points and outside of him not getting a clutch goal, I mean, the way Tarasenko was really taking away gaps and also with his back checks too. I saw a lot of that tonight from Vladimir Tarasenko. Blocking shots too. Let me quickly look to see if how many block shots Tarasenko has. This page does not have it, the one that I on NHL.com. But let's move on real quick for the moment where we thought this game was won for the Panthers. After the last penalty that the Panthers took a few minutes into the third period, where Mikkola had that slide to Capo, where that could have been a big momentum shift, but even then, for the Rangers power play to no avail on that one. And just a few minutes later, and that's when Anton Lundell got his go-ahead goal for the Panthers. So when the Panthers killed off that penalty, and then you're quieting the Madison Square Garden crowd, which the ice conditions not the best for this one. As hey, for Emirates Bank Arena, you'll take the less events if that means better ice conditions. But hey, the Florida Panthers still found a way even with that. So after they killed off the Mikkola penalty, and that's when I thought the game was won for the Panthers, because it just oozed confidence as that it was once again another third period takeover.
I'm going to have to go with the Lundell goal, and it's not just because, I'm wearing his jersey, but it's because I think that Igor has been such a great goalie during these playoffs, and especially during this series, that finally a puck oozed through him. It wasn't like one-on-one. Like, he actually let in a shot. And the fact that Lundell was able to place it where he did after, Tarasenko glided through and took away the eyes of Shesterkin, that's really what the Panthers have been trying to do this whole series, is just take his eyes away. And they haven't connected on it. And now that they have finally did it, and it was such a huge shift in how that game was turning out, because, listen, it was back and forth. Each team was getting chances, but it wasn't really, it really wasn't going one way or another. But if anything, just that one shot that Lundell put on finally, for me, just kind of separated it, and it put Panthers back into a zone where, hey, we can control the neutral zone, we can control this game. Let's just take care of business and let's lock it down.
And think about what was happening before that Lundell goal too, where even though the Panthers had a good jump to them, the the Panthers and Rangers were trading turnovers in the neutral zone, and then when the puck is bouncing and then you're unable to get set, and then maybe you go a little bit aggressive on a pinch, or in the Panthers case, for a shot for the Rangers, and then where the puck is landing, and then the quick out. It's all, like I say this quite often on the show. First pass out of the zone is just as important as can be, because it really sets the tone for the rest of the rush, and for the Panthers to get up there. And then once again, something they've done all throughout the postseason, and the goaltenders too. I mean, Vasilevsky, Swayman, Shesterkin, doing it against them too at proper times. I said after game 3, game 4, that we're not going to see many high scoring games in this series. No. It kind of regressed back to the mean for the Panthers, for how they've been able to just continue to just get back to having the ice in their direction, because it was another first period for the Rangers that they were starting to get their game. But the Panthers, pace. It really comes down to that. They know how to pace themselves.
They do. And like we talked about last week, they've been planning this, and they've been working, and they've been conditioning since day one of minicamp to get to this point. I think they're one of the best conditioned teams. They can skate with anybody. It doesn't matter if it's speed, but they can outlast everybody. And it goes to show that this team is committed to their ultimate goal, which is winning a Stanley Cup. And you have to wonder, how am I going to phrase this? You have to wonder about the other teams. There's different storylines, there's different things that other teams do that really kind of give them a boost and everything. But at the end of the day, steady and keeping it, going along really can win the day. Not getting too high, not getting too low, but keeping everything medium. I think that's probably going to be the best way to go. And, with the final game, or maybe final 2 games, the games are going to be low scoring, because nobody wants to take a chance. Everybody wants to play perfectly. They don't want to give up a big goal or a big play, because that could be the series. And I think, when it comes to Saturday, I'm not going to preview this, but, you have to think that, who's going to be the looser team? Is it going to be New York, or is it going to be Florida?
And actually, that would be a good time to talk about more of who's going to be more of the loose team, even if this does go to 7, or even if it does go to 6, because at the end of the day, it is an elimination game either way. So we are going to continue that conversation here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
All right.
Segment number 3 here on this Friday, May 31st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show, as Nick went to take care of his cat meowing at the door. But hey,
every day.
This is live, so we gotta go with what happens when we are doing these live here. But so it's crazy, because the ESPN put up a graphic about the Panthers leading this series to New York's their 59 minutes of leading right before Lundell scored to New York's 58, and then the rest of it was tied. The offensive zone time, which mostly the Panthers have had in the series, after the second period, it was 2 minutes more of the Rangers having that offensive zone time too in this one. But still, the Panthers' ability to weather storms over and over again is just impressive, with how they're able to just have a killer instinct for them. And it's just for them, just when it comes to gaining the red line, shooting the puck in. You talk about how when it comes to teams being loose versus when teams are tight. For the Panthers, when they get to a certain part where they know that they're taking care of the puck, not coughing it up, and able to shoot in, and even in a period where they don't have the long change, it's a lot easier for them. And even for the Rangers, I saw Matt Rempe. I don't want to go too much into him, but his last shift was in the second period, barely played too. So whenever you're able to get that advantage with bodies on the ice too, which that top line of Philip Hedl, Mika Zibanejad, and Chris Kreider, that was a revolving door of wingers there too for the Rangers all throughout the night. But for the Panthers to get pucks deep, and even if they're not successfully on the forecheck and even getting their chances, you were still having blue liners not so up in the zone too. Because we saw quite a few of those odd man rushes early on in the game for the New York Rangers, which we saw the Panthers limit them as the game went on too. So that's another great thing about how things buckle as in late game situations for the Cats, and once again the comfort level too.
So I think this series right now, as it stands, comes down to a few things. One, it's Florida's penalty kill being effective against probably the best or second best power play unit in the playoffs, giving them nothing, only one power play goal. Secondly, I believe it's the fact that Florida's been able to weather any kind of storm that New York's thrown at them. I mean, you think about Game 4 and how New York just came out and just really wanted to take it to them, and that's fine. We'll let you guys go out a period, but it's only a 1-goal lead that you guys have. But it's just, to me, again, it's just another showing of maturity and the team knowing exactly what they're going to do and what their identity is, and that no game is ever out of reach. And then the third part of it comes down to timely goaltending. I would have to say Igor Shesterkin has definitely led in this series, and that Bob has, he's played good, but he's not to the level that we all saw him at last year, against Toronto, against Boston, and against Carolina. But he's been good enough to give them a chance to win games and win it not because of him. So to me, the forecheck, I would probably say is the fourth. Because if you look at tonight and how the game started, Florida's grade A chances were off of the forecheck and causing the Rangers to turn the puck over. They would hit one of the Rangers players. They would try to get up the boards, and what do you have? You have a defenseman right there who's just going to dump it right back in, and then you have extended time in the O-zone, and that defensive pair is, their legs are burning. They want to get off the ice and everything. So I think really that first period and their forecheck really kind of set the tone for how the Rangers were going to be for the rest of the game, because I think they got tired.
Yeah, I mean, it was for the Rangers. I mean, it was just, especially that third line for the Rangers, the Wenberg, Roslovic, Kakko line. They were 13 shot attempts for them, for the opposition, 6 shots for that group, and shots against were 7 against for that Wenberg line, and they only had 2, and a goal against too. That's another thing for that. The goal against was that Lundell breakaway, that odd man rush, excuse me, for them. So that's another thing, that line was just pinned consistently in their own end. And also going back to third period takeover for the Cats, 14-7 in shots, 12-5 in scoring chances, and 8-2 in the high danger area too.
Mm-hmm.
So just about that flip of the switch for the Panthers. 20 block shots too, just committed to protecting Bob. And I'm kind of, I'm kind of bummed about how last year ended for the Panthers, with Bob specifically, of how he carried them, and he was the Panthers Conn Smythe leader last year.
Yep.
Nowhere. I don't think he's over the bar. Someone like Alexander Barkov, or maybe even Gustav Forsling. But maybe that's a conversation for later. but still, how you're able to just protect the house too, with so much time, and just the quick outs for the Panthers, and once again how the blue liners for Florida, they came to play. So that's another thing when it comes to just protecting the house.
So if you look at the next gen stats and look at how the player lines and everything and who played the best, so you have Sam Bennett, and you have Gustav Forsling, and then I think you have Montour and Mikkola.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have 3 out of the 4 top people on your team being defense, you probably had a really good game. And on top of that, your goalie is probably going to, buy you a couple beers or maybe a steak dinner afterwards. So this is what I'm saying, is that I don't think Bob has had to be the Bob that we know last postseason. Has he been shaky at times? Yes, but the team has always been there to pick him up. But I can't say enough good things about the top 4 defense. And even, as you were saying earlier, OEL and Kulikov, they played probably their best game tonight. Kulikov getting down and almost having a goal. I mean, his first, real scoring chance there. I kind of joked in our group saying, like, if there's anybody else but Kulikov that put that shot on net, it's probably a goal, because he's known to miss the net quite often when he's at the point. But it's just good to know that this team knows exactly what they're doing and what they want to accomplish. I keep saying that, and I know it's probably annoying to the listeners, but you guys have to understand that if you have good behaviors and if you know exactly how you want to execute things, you go out and do it, you're going to have more success instead of, oh, well, this didn't work this one time, let's just throw it out and let's try it again. No, it's a steady path that you have to grind on and you have to keep going on with.
Yeah. Ulrich and Larson had 8 hits on the night. Aaron Ekblad had 5 with 5 blocks too. Kulikov had 3 hits too. So just the defense was just, I have nothing to complain about when it comes to that. And the best part about 0 5-on-5 goals against, Lafreniere got on the score sheet again too. But if that is the depth scoring for the Rangers that you're getting, but the one goal that you have from Kreider comes this late into the series, and I think Zibanejad got even his first points of the series too. Both
he got
of them.
His first 2 points. Yep.
First 2. He on the broken stick, and then that feed to Lafreniere right before that, and a little bit of a give and go there with Kreider on the shorty too. So too little, too late.
And you know what? I'm not going to say anybody's name right now, but I'll probably say it after the series is over. But there's a couple of other Ranger players that you could be talking about right now, and they're disappearing act, because it's another postseason where they just, when the moment becomes tight or becomes, really pressurized, they're nowhere to be seen. But, I'll let the series play out before I say anything.
Is it maybe in relation to a food item? Let's relate it to South Florida. Is it related to a food item that you dip in your coffee, maybe? But we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there for
for those who are listening. I'm just idly by, just maybe
just maybe. So let's get a series clincher first before we continue that too, because
we don't want to be Tkachuk.
No, definitely not. But Nick, I want to thank you so much once again for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. A 3-2 regulation win for the Florida Panthers. No overtime this time for the Cats. But tell everybody where they can find you online.
Everybody, you guys can follow me on X or Twitter at Prudential0. Armando, thank you again for having me on. I'm glad that we could have a somewhat celebratory winning post-game show. I'm hoping Saturday will be even more celebrating going on, but let's just win one more game and let's get to the final part. and get the business done that they came to take care of.
One more, baby. See you next Friday, my friend.
See you next Friday.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nich Fairbanks, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.